Imagine that if you wanted to make $200,000 per year, instead of going out and getting one job that's really hard to get, that has a salary of $200,000 per year, you instead got four much easier to get jobs that each pay $50,000 per year. And you did those four jobs in the same amount of time that it takes someone to do a job that pays $200,000 per year. Would you do it? This thing that I'm talking about is referred to as overemployment, and believe it or not, there's thousands of people on the internet that are already doing this. There's an entire subreddit with hundreds of thousands of people that talk about how they juggle 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I even saw one person was juggling 11 different full-time jobs, making over $1 million per year. Basically, the whole principle is you stack a number of different remote jobs that are traditionally easier to get than, like, say, a $200,000 job that I used as the example, and you do them all remotely at the same time without any of these jobs knowing that you have another job. So naturally, in this video, I want to compare this concept of overemployment with side hustles because, I'll be honest, my channel over the last 5 or so years has focused almost exclusively on side hustles and freelancing. So I'm going to try my best, I promise, to not be biased when making this comparison, so that if you're someone who's looking for ways of making extra money or more money, or just you need more money, you can decide whether overemployment or picking up some side hustles is a better option for you. And just really quick before I get into the first comparison, I don't actually have a sponsor for this video, so I decided to sponsor it myself. This is my email copywriting prompts for beginners book. It's available on Amazon. That's it. Let's get into the video. Okay, so there's 3 main categories I'm going to use to compare overemployment with side hustles. And the first one is probably the one you're all most interested in: earning potential. So if we look at overemployment, and for this example, use a standard $50,000 per year job, which for people in North America, it's not a bad salary. It's not a fantastic salary, but it's a good salary that many people can achieve. If you stack 4 jobs like that are 100% remote with overemployment, you're making $200,000 per year, which is pretty incredible for someone who would normally be in the ballpark skills and experience-wise to just get a $50K per year job in the first place. $200K is pretty great. Now, if we're comparing that same type of person who would normally be able to take a $50,000 per year career job and look at how much they might be able to make with side hustles, when you think about freelancing, I'd imagine that person probably falls in the bucket of selling their services as a side hustler anywhere from $25 to $50 per hour. So best case scenario, if you're that person who can get 4 $50K per year jobs with side hustles, the maximum you can make working full time at $25 to $50 per hour, well, let's call it $50 per hour, is about $104,000 per year if you're filling your week every week full-time with work with your side hustle. So I think this is pretty obvious. When it comes to earning potential, just at first glance, overemployment can make you more. And in the example we provide with a $50,000 per year base salary type of job, you're making about $100,000 more in a year if you stack 4 of those versus doing a side hustle. So the second comparison I want to make is based around the concept of work-life balance. How do these 2 different types of work stack up? Starting with overemployment, I'll be honest, it sounds like a nightmare. It sounds pretty terrible, the whole concept of work-life balance, and here's why. I imagine that if you're working 4 different remote jobs all at the same time, managing your day-to-day calendar and all the meetings you're probably going to have is probably going to be a nightmare, especially when the 3 other jobs don't know you're working that 4th job and vice versa. If something changes in your calendar, a meeting changes, an appointment changes, and you're needed at a different time of day, and this happens same day or the day before, you're going to have a hard time moving things around 4 jobs to make that work. And that might bleed into your personal life, because if you're unable to get something rescheduled between the hours of 9 to 5, you're probably going to bleed into your evenings, weekends, whenever. You got to figure out how to make this happen if you're going to be juggling all these different jobs with overemployment, so that nobody raises suspicions. Side hustles, on the other hand, which is one of the reasons why I love side hustles, are way more flexible. Your time is your own, and other than deadlines that you've set with your clients, your schedule is yours. You decide when you want to work. You decide if you need to reschedule a task. It's all up to you. Also, another thing to consider is with a side hustle, you can take time off whenever you like. You want to take a vacation? Sure, just don't book yourself any meetings next week. When you're doing overemployment, especially in this example where you're juggling 4 different jobs, if you want to take vacation, you're probably going to need to give an insane amount of notice, and then you have to get vacation approved as time off with 4 different companies. That sounds stressful, and if you're someone who wants to do this and you have a family or friends and you need to book a trip, it's going to make it pretty difficult. The third comparison I'm going to make between overemployment and side hustles is one that I actually think is the most important and the thing you should consider most if you're thinking about doing either of these things, even more so than the earning potential, and that is sustainability and legitimacy. I think it's pretty obvious that this whole concept of overemployment is just pretty sketchy in the first place. And I think that if you're someone who gives it a shot, you might find yourself in a situation where if your personal situation changes, or you get found out, or you want to try to apply for a different job and you want to use your other jobs as references, it's going to make things a little bit difficult. Because imagine you apply for a job that's better than these 4 overemployment jobs you're doing, and they ask for references. You probably can only give one of those 4 jobs you're working as a reference, because if you give 4 references and they call them, they all say that you've worked there from January to December of the same year, that's going to be a little bit sketchy and raise some red flags, right? Also, if the company you're applying to uses a background check company to verify your employment or look up your history somehow, it might get a little murky if they figure out you've been juggling 4 different jobs without any of them knowing. So there's that, and when we think about sustainability, there's also something that you might not be thinking about now, but many people might not realize this is them until they're doing it, is maybe all the sneaking around and keeping things secret and guarding what you say around your coworkers at your 4 different jobs is hard to do and stressful for some people, and it might just become mentally exhausting to basically live this lie of secrecy with 4 different employers, right? Let's say you have a team event, a Christmas party with 4 different companies, and you have a couple drinks and you let it slip that you're doing this overemployment thing. The constant fear of not doing that to try to, make sure the jig isn't up for you seems super stressful and might make this a situation where most people who try this might not be able to keep it up because it's just too mentally exhausting. And with all that, if you do get discovered, I would say with almost 100% certainty, the company that figures out you're working for 3 other companies probably just going to fire you at the best case scenario, and worst case scenarios, they tell the other 3 companies and you get fired by all 4 jobs. Not the best situation. Now, with side hustles, if I want to try to be unbiased here when it comes to sustainability, you could argue that when you're running a side hustle, yeah, there is a lot of juggling and time management, and that might be stressful in its own right. And I'll admit, it can be. But in the case of a side hustle, all of this juggling and calendar management and making it happen could actually grow into a situation where you've built a pretty successful business that has staying power. You could sell it, you could start hiring employees. It just becomes something tangible that you've grown versus secretly working 4 other jobs and having nothing once you've quit or got fired. Just something to think about. So in conclusion, I think both overemployment and side hustles both create an opportunity to earn pretty good money for yourself, either as a full-time thing, as a side hustle, as an extra thing, however you want to look at it. Both of them are definitely ways of making money. But if it's not obvious by this point in the video, I think that overemployment, as popular and trendy as it might seem based on the internet, is a little sketchy, maybe a little unethical, and maybe not something that you can sustain for the long haul. So my advice, check out a side hustle, give it a shot and see how that goes for you, but don't just take my advice for it. Let me know, what do you think? Are you overemployed? Do you do a side hustle? What do you think of this comparison? Let me know in the comments and we'll chat about it. Anyways, that's it for this video. Cheers, guys.